I noted back when Donald Trump was a candidate that he represented a divergence from the neocon status quo, but only to a point. He would appear to resist it when it came to the Syrian case, resist it when it came to sabre-rattling with Russia, and resist it when it came to his stance on the general MO of Western foreign policy, since forever now, which has been to overthrow dictators in the Middle East only to unleash radical Islamic forces. However, when it came to the Iran issue, he entirely followed the script, for whatever random reason. I called him an on-again, off-again neocon, whereas neoconservative-style foreign policy being the bipartisan mainstream, it was fair to call Hillary Clinton a full-on 24/7 neocon, though she was a Democrat. In any case, although Donald Trump represented a deviation, or at least hinted at one, it was always a haphazard thing. We got a little hint of which way he was really going to go when he took guys like John Bolton on board. Now, the transformation is complete. Donald Trump has converged with the neoconservative mainstream. He points out that the realpolitik reason to stay in the Middle East, to secure oil, is no longer valid since America now produces most of its own oil due to fancy new methods, but instead, the reason to stay is, quite openly, Israel. So America, and by extension the West, since America says jump and we say how high, will be militarily occupying the Middle East forever, not because of geopolitical necessity, but entirely because of ideological commitment to Israel. Technically, I'm a Zionist, because I think Israel deserves to exist, but that doesn't mean I think it has a clean record, and I certainly believe Israel has been a major negative influence on American foreign policy with regard to wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, and elsewhere afield. The AIPAC lobby group is extremely strong. You wanted a wall? Well, here's your wall. The only silver lining is that this confirms what we've always suspected. It seems Trump's value isn't in draining the swamp or actively reforming things, but instead lies in the fact that even when it turns out he's committed to growing the swamp, the man is too much of a walking blunder machine than to do anything else than state openly the justification that previous presidents felt necessary to obfuscate. George W. Bush justified upsetting the precarious power balance of the region through his war on terror, the goal of which was to spread freedom and democracy. Euphemistic language was all the rage. Although the project for a new American century had this all planned out, 9/11 was the perfect excuse to accelerate things. It provided a moral impetus that could be cast as preemptively defensive rather than purely imperialistic. The idea that the war was for oil and Israel was a conspiracy theory during that time. A fairly mainstream one, to be fair, as seen in Michael Moore movies, but nonetheless not the openly stated justification by those enacting the grand strategy. Now, Trump changes that, and in one fell swoop he states it outright. It was for oil and Israel. But now that we don't need to rely on oil from the region so much, now it will simply be Israel. And maybe the Saudis too, in spite of not needing to rely on Saudi oil. Trump is also committed to the status quo as concerns Saudi Arabia. It's now purely ideological. The major Sunni Islam power and the major Jewish power in the region may hate each other, but not as much as they hate the major Shia Islam power and its allies, and that power is Iran, and one ally would be Syria. The United States, the Saudis, and Israel are all committed to agreement on that one thing, from now until forever, just 'cause. The left portrayed Trump as Hitler, and the far right wanted him to be, and mainstream conservatives and other more middle-of-the-road supporters believed he would save the nation from disarray, drain the swamp, build the wall, give America a better deal through strong and strident leadership, never backing down, and always dealing from a strong hand. But the true scandal of Trump is that behind the gold gilding is the same tepid Republican agenda of the last 3 decades. The man's bark is way, way, way bigger than his bite. Yeah, but the economy is good, right? I'm glad it's good. If America sneezes, us lot in Blightistan will catch a cold. So, believe me, I'm glad. However, it's really impossible to say who is responsible for the uptrend that has been continuing since the recession. although it has recently accelerated. So maybe Trump is responsible, maybe not. Maybe it was Trump. Maybe it was Obama. Maybe neither. Maybe it was the Fed monetary policy. So maybe it was Ben Bernanke, Janet Yellen, or Jeremy Powell. Maybe it was none of those people, because maybe it's all just the natural cycle of boom and bust. That's the explanation I would favour, at least. Certainly the employment figures are great. But do you remember when Obama was president, and Conservatives, and Trump actually, said that although the figures under Obama were promising, they actually underreported unemployment because they only counted those who were still looking for work, and left out all those who had simply given up.
You know, when you go out there, you see tremendously unhappy people. And then you read, oh, the jobs numbers. Well, it's a phony number, because when you stop looking for a job, you're no longer in that statistic. So if you're looking for a job and you stop, you're no longer in the statistic, John. And then they say it's a 5.2, 5.3%. It's not 5.3%. It's in the 20s, 30s. It could even be in the 40s.
Notice how that argument has completely disappeared from the Conservative toolbox now that Trump is president. Only consistent libertarians are continuing to make this point.
The unemployment rate is unbelievably low. You have great jobs numbers. Job creation is looking very healthy. Have you changed your opinion 1 year later?
Well, not at all. I mean, first of all the trends that you're pointing to, those are the exact same trends that existed under Barack Obama. And when Donald Trump was a candidate, and when I voted for him, he was calling out Obama for claiming credit for what was phony numbers, that the real unemployment rate, according to Donald Trump, when he was a candidate, was 20%, 30%, 40%, because he was looking at all the people that were working part-time but that wanted to work full-time, but more importantly, all the people who weren't working but are not even counted as being unemployed because they've dropped out of the labor force. They're discouraged and they're not looking for jobs. And that trend hasn't changed. You know, Donald Trump inherited a big, fat, ugly bubble, to quote Trump, from Obama, and all he's done is blown more air into it.
So, how robust is this growth? If Trump is a true miracle maker, then the time is coming to prove it, because this period of sustained positive growth is so far the second longest in US history, and it's coming up on the #1 spot next year. The peak will eventually come, as it always does. And the stats say it should come soon, or we're in totally uncharted territory. If that eventual dip is severe enough to cast doubt on Trump, then the small upshot to Trump revealing himself so blatantly and brazenly as the face of the status quo, and in a way unmasking the status quo, is that the status quo will suffer a shock like never before when it comes, and it may suffer its demise along with Trump. The status quo gets its power from its mythology, and if Trump inadvertently shatters those myths and tells it like it is, even in the process of supporting it, then the outcome is potentially just as good as if he opposed it on its face. He doesn't need to be the man to reach down and pull the plug out of the swamp, if he's the man dumb enough to pull it out with his feet because he tripped over it. That's the potential silver lining here. Of course, that's just me trying to add a little white to the black pill. I think anyone who supported the candidate Trump who is not disillusioned at this point is clearly just not paying attention, or they're just being overwhelmed by the fact that the economy is good. The truth is, I'm thinking about the long term, and everything Trump promised that was positive, he's dragging his feet on, and it really does look like he's never going to accomplish those things. And many of the negative things he complained against, he's now moving himself closer to. He's moving himself closer to the neoconservative agenda, even though candidate Trump was much closer to a paleoconservative foreign policy, though, as I said, being on again, off again, in his random way. He's fully transformed now, at least, or perhaps revealed who he always was. Who knows? Either way, you got the chaos candidate, America. Because like I said with Hillary, it is the status quo which is chaos.